And so just like the Tish James case that we talked about at length yesterday, check our YouTube feed if you missed it. If you missed it, you shouldn't. This case against James Comey looks a lot stronger than the media would have us believe.
Well, I think it's very strong, but I'm not as optimistic that because this is going to be tried in the New York-Washington corridor. And I remember in the Letitia James case, there were experts who testified that the Deutsche Bank had no complaint. The loan was paid on time with interest in full, and they would loan to him again, and they didn't let it. They said it was not relevant to the case. The E. Jean Carroll case, they brought in all sorts of testimony that proved that she was, and they said it's not, they're going to say, and I hope they don't, but they're going to say, we're talking about a particular authorization to McCabe. Just take one example. This is irrelevant. Or they're going to say, well, James Comey never authorized it. It was brought to his attention that people were freelancing and leaking, and he didn't authorize it, but he was under no, compulsion to stop it. He just thought, wow, I don't know what I'm aware of it. That's what they're going to do. And it's going to depend on that, if it's in Washington, a Washington grand jury indicted him apparently, and then it's going to depend on the judge and the prosecutor. But there is a common denominator, two of them, with all of this, Megyn, and that is he had no business doing any of this. He is a FBI director. His job is to investigate and present evidence to a prosecutor. The prosecutor was Loretta Lynch, and she was conflicted, and Obama knew it, so she bowed out. Remember, she had met with Clinton on the tarmac in Phoenix.
Tarmac.
Yes, and so James Comey, who had been a prosecutor, he was the one, remember, a long time ago that went after Martha Stewart. He was a glory hound, and he really trumped up that thing. And they said, you know what? James Comey is such an egomaniac that we'll bow out. And then he took on the role. They didn't have a subordinate in the DOJ. He took on the role as the investigator and the de facto attorney general to determine whether these charges would go. And that's not right. He should have said, here's the evidence. On the one hand, she's obviously guilty on the case of Hillary. On the other hand, maybe it would be hard to prove to a jury. You make the decision. But he was getting the evidence and then making the decision in public to himself. And that was the problem. And then the other thing is, he's a narcissist and an egomaniac, and he's always too smart by half. He always tries to outthink and manipulate. So he's thinking, Hillary's going to be president, but I'll get a lot of criticism if I don't bring this up, like I was one of her toadies. So I'm going to kind of sort of bring it up and then kind of sort of bring it down. And then when she's elected, I can kind of say, I have a disinterested reputation. And that's the same thing he did all the time. He told Donald Trump, you're kind of sort of not the object of an investigation. And then and then he would go out and memorialize it, put it in a safe, and then leak it through a third party. So it's really disturbing because he's always trying to, if he had just told the truth, he might be okay. But he tries to manipulate and go into all of these self-righteous, narcissistic, egocentric conspiracies. And he, if you start lying, oh, what a terrible web we weave when we try to deceive. And that's what he does. And I hope that they have a good prosecutor, and I hope they have a good judge, because he's obviously culpable. But given what we've seen with Alvin Bragg and Letitia James and Jack Smith and Fannie Willis, the judges and the prosecutors have been, it's a very high bar if you're representing
I'll tell you something, though.
The Trump administration.
I'll tell you something. They may get this dismissed as vindictive prosecution, though I don't know that they will. I actually don't think that's got high hopes. It's a very tough claim to prove. They may get it booted because they're arguing that Lindsay Halligan, the U.S. attorney, wasn't properly appointed, and that's being handled by another judge. That could be a way out for them. We'll see. But I no longer believe they have a shot of getting it dismissed on the four corners of the pleading, saying that they did not plead a viable criminal complaint against him. That we are going to have to get into this because they do have very clear evidence that James Comey lied. Yes. I actually wasn't as sure about it before because the indictment is so vague. But now that I see the case coming together and this supplemental filing, they've got it. Like, we'll see whether the jury finds it material and relevant, all that stuff, but if they get to a jury. But I don't think the judge can dismiss this on the paper, on the four corners of the document, or throw it out for failure to state a claim, because they did plead a very obvious criminal complaint here of him misleading Congress. They've got the evidence.
It's going to be very interesting what Andrew McCabe, because he had been found culpable, guilty to lying on 4 occasions to federal investigators. I think 2 of them were under oath. So his credibility was not very good if he was going to testify that he had been authorized by James Comey to leak. And he said he wasn't, that he leaked he did not leak spontaneously. He had leaked with the nod of James Comey, and people, I think, had been...
But that's not even the case.
No.
People were mistaken into thinking that this case brought against Comey was about McCabe. It's not. It's about Richmond.
Yes, I know it. But my point is that if you can show that Comey was using other people to leak and lying about it, and then when Ted Cruz says, McCabe said this, you said this, and that's going to come up, then McCabe, in a weird way, his credibility is enhanced and Comey is diminished, because you can say, well,
there's more.
Yeah.
There's more. So there's another soundbite I want to play for you, because this is also undermined by the documents just released. It's James Comey testifying at that same hearing where Ted Cruz cross-examined him, September 30th, 2020, in response to Senator Lindsey Graham asking him about whether he received intel, which we know he did, thanks to the documents that have been declassified through Kash Patel, whether he remembers receiving intelligence about Hillary Clinton's plans to try to connect Donald Trump to Russia. This came out over the summer, where we saw that they had received intelligence showing that Hillary had this plan. And then lo and behold, what did she try to do? She tried to connect Trump to Russia. So this is Senator Graham in September of 2020, long after it's all happened, asking James Comey whether he remembers being told that by the intel agents. Watch this.
September the 7th, 2016, the U.S. intelligence officials forwarded an investigative referral of FBI to FBI Director James Comey and Assistant Director of Counterintelligence Peter Strzok regarding U.S. presidential candidate Hillary Clinton's approval of a plan concerning U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump and Russian hackers hampering U.S. elections as a means of distracting the public from her use of a private email server. You don't remember getting that or being taught? That doesn't ring any bells with me. Okay. Well, that's a pretty stunning thing. It didn't ring a bell, but it did come to you.
Didn't ring a bell, James Comey wanted Congress to believe. And yet now they've produced the actual handwritten note, showing it right here on screen, James Comey's own handwritten note, which I'll read to you. It's dated September 26th, 2016. And there's a line item that reads, HRC plan to tie Trump. HRC plan to tie Trump. And then there's a note, a couple lines down saying, carry Trump finance debts, I think it says, for Moscow. I mentioned New York Times and Russia. It's very clearly in the context of Russia. He's saying Hillary Clinton planned to tie Trump. And we know that she had that plan because we've now seen all the intel that was circulating at the FBI and CIA, who had unearthed, thanks to the Russians who had been, it's a long story, but basically somebody had been spying. I think it was the Australians had been spying on the Russians and found talk of this plan. And they brought it to our intel agents saying, hey, FYI, Hillary Clinton's up to some dirty business, in case you're interested. And our intelligence agencies discussed it. We learned that over the summer. And now you see the James Comey note saying it, and that then you see the testimony like he didn't remember, Victor. This isn't like, hey, do you know what salad you had 4 years ago on a Friday? This is, did the Democrat candidate for president have a plan to try the Republican candidate for president to Russia, which is an investigation you then pursued for months and tried to ruin his first term with.
Yeah, but remember that he testified, I think it was to the House Oversight Committee, on two, and that doesn't ring a bell, not aware of that, couldn't quite remember that. People had maybe said that, but I never heard it. That's what he said 245 times under oath. And they went through all of these questions, and he there was no perjury referrals or anything. So I agree 110% with everything your analysis, but given that what he's done and what McCabe did and what Brennan did and what Clapper did, all of them, and yet all we hear is retribution, revenge for, when the real issue is not that Donald Trump in a revenge fashion, although maybe he had vengeance on his mind and that weighed into it, but that doesn't really matter. The matter is whether they're culpable or not. And for the entire Biden administration, they were given exemptions. And the whole purpose was so that the statute of limitations they thought would run out in the small chance that Donald Trump would ever be elected again, they thought. But they're all culpable. And James Comey is he's the most grating because he is the most sanctimonious. He's always saying, I'm wandering on the beach reading Nietzsche, and I'm reading Kierkegaard, and I'm reading all of these philosophers. Oh, by the way, I just saw this 8647 on the beach. I have no idea what it means. My wife brought it to my...
You're right.
He's a pathological liar. He really is. And
is a narcissist.
He's a narcissist.
Wait, Did you know gold is up around 40% this year? That's not speculation, it's reality. And if a portion of your savings is not diversified into gold, you're missing the boat. Here are the facts. The US dollar, still too weak. The government debt, still growing. This is why central banks are flocking to gold. They're the ones driving prices up to record highs. But it's not too late to buy gold from Birch Gold Group and get in the door right now. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in gold. You don't pay a dime out of pocket. Just text MK to 989898 and claim your free info kit. There's no obligation, just useful information. The best indicator of the future is the past, and gold has historically been a safe haven. So text MK to 989898 right now to claim your free info kit on gold. MK to the number 989898. Protect your future today with Birch Gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.